You're listening to Two Guys Talking Wine with Michael Pincus and André Prue.
Hello, Michael.
André, I'm in the dark. And not the usual way.
I know. We're cutting it a little bit close today with our regular release schedule because you've been off traveling, and frankly, the mini-series that we just did from Los Arango took a lot out of me.
Yes, I know it did. And it was a good series, though. I think everybody liked it, and since we are here at the moment, they are sponsoring the podcast for the next 3 months. So thank you very much to Los Arango for sponsoring. And again, it's one of those things where we only take sponsors that we actually believe in, and we really loved the product.
I actually knew that there was an LTO coming up. So there's a limited time offer until the middle of July. You can get a bottle of Los Arango Reposado for $60.15. But like a stupid idiot, I went and paid full price for one last week. I'm actually on my second bottle since coming back from Mexico. And while they've been sponsoring the podcast, they have not sent us a pallet of free tequila, which I'm hoping is coming down the road.
No, I'm still waiting for one of those, large trucks and the beep 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 they make to back up to the door and drop off my pallet, but they have yet to do that. So unfortunately, I just have to nurse the ones that I have here.
So
instead of bathing in tequila like I always do.
Well, I mean, isn't that a pleasant picture? I guess the alcohol is high enough to kill any sort of bacteria anyways. We're actually going to bring it local. There's been a lot of news that has happened both in Niagara and in Ontario here. And we thought this is as good a time as any to unpack it. Just because what seems to happen in Ontario is like, we get a few like little trickles of changes to our 100-year-old laws, or like a few places change hands, but like there's been like a whole lot of stuff going on in the past few months. I was recently at the Clos Jordanne grand opening. You were in Italy. I'm really, really excited about having another like ultra premium winery to be able to visit and buy the product and not have to just go to the LCBO or wait for it to, trickle through however it is I can get it.
So so obviously Le Clos Jordanne, when they originally started, when they were part of Vincor, they were going to have a beautiful building on King Street. That was the plan. That went by the wayside when Constellation took over.
Well, come on. I don't think it was ever... Listen, let's be real. I don't know if it was ever going to happen because the architecture was done by Frank Gehry. Like, it is unfortunate that this building never got built, but like this was like 25 years ago. And if I remember correctly, the price tag at that time was something like $12 million. And I mean, let's face it, you've got to sell a lot of $40 Grand Clos Pinot Noir to cover the cost of a $12 million winery. Nobody's doing that.
But on the other hand, that was the big plan. So it was kiboshed, and then obviously Arterra bought out Q and Angels Gate, which is really kind of I hate to say, kind of ironically funny, if you want to call it that. I had somebody on one of my wine tours, and I always say, "Who are your favorite wineries?" And they said, "Oh, I love Angels Gate." And I go, "Well, guess what?"
Well, I mean, that's it though. I'm a big fan of the direction that Arterra has been taking all of their brands. And, if there was a winery to buy and to paint over and to, put new wallpaper up, like Angels Gate's not a winery that's going to be missed by many people.
I think it will, but
okay, by many people. Like, I mean, the 5 people that are going to miss it, like that's sort of the end of the list. Like, to those 5 people, I'm very sad for you. To the rest of us, Le Clos Jordanne is a much better brand.
Yeah, it's a more premium brand, obviously. So I'm going sometime in July after my rosé report comes out because I'm kind of bogged down in that at the moment. But how did the Clos look? Like, did they really change the look of Angel's Gate, or was it just Angel's Gate with a new coat of paint?
Well, the interior was, I mean, it's set up like it's definitely going to be a place that they're going to be hoping to run a lot of events out of. It has a small retail store like right off the main entrance. The interior has been completely reconfigured. There is a beautiful art installation that, I mean, it really does speak to the brand really well. Like, it's supposed to be a representation of the layers of earth that exist under the vineyards and the colors of the different rows. Like, I'm not doing a great job describing it, but if you take a look at Instagram, anyone who was at the grand opening, you can see where it is in the background. And like it had a buzz to it. It was a very exciting event to be a part of. And yeah, like it gives a good vibe when you pull up to the Le Clos.
And it's Domain now. Domain Le Clos Jordanne, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Or is it Domain Clos Jordanne?
No, Domaine Le Clos Jordanne.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of a new old place to visit, I guess.
Well, it's not like there's a huge lineup of other new wineries opening up, right?
You know what? If you think about it, since COVID, we've had a lot of little wineries open up. Like a lot of just teeny little places and little barns. I was driving around on the weekend on Sunday, and I saw a whole bunch of them, like Dim and Stonewall. And
that's fair. Actually, you know what? I take back my cynical response. I recently stopped by Blackbank Hill, and they are making, I think, one of the, if not the best, Viognier that I've ever had from the province.
So you see, there's all these little ones, and they're not even on the map, which is interesting. You'd think they would get on the map, but obviously Whammo hadn't caught up to them, or they haven't caught up to Whammo, or well.
So and speaking of Whammo, did you see that they have underwent a bit of a rebrand?
I didn't see the rebrand, but I saw there was a wholesale kick out the door. What's that thing by Tears for Fears? Kick out the. Bring back the jam. Kick out the. I can't remember what the lyric is. But
thinking of MC5. Kick out the jams.
Kick out the jam. Whatever it is. Bring back the. Me and my Tears for Fears is not so good at the moment.
I mean, look at you. You're having a full-on seniors moment.
With the you do know with the debate coming up later this week between you know who and Biden. It's seniors moment week.
Oh, that's funny. So Wine Country Ontario is undergoing another rebrand, which it feels fairly recent because, like, I remember the Taste Untamed campaign that they launched. I guess it was around the time of the pandemic, so I guess it's been about 5 years. It just seems like Wine Country Ontario is always in flux, but I mean, there have been some major changes. Magdalena Kaiser, who was the longtime director of publicity, is no longer there. They've hired a new executive director. There's been some changes to the structure there. So I think it's just they're looking to completely start from scratch again.
Yeah, I think it's been a long time coming, in my opinion. The old guard has been there a long time, and when I try to talk to winemakers, and I'm like, what is the old guard's 5 top top hits? What is their best things that they've done? Nobody can give me a top 5. And then I say, give me a top 3, and nobody can give me a top 3. So, and sales of Ontario wines have been pretty stagnant. And they've been so for a long time. And it's time that we get some new blood, new ideas, new thoughts, into the mix.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one thing is Wine Country Ontario spent quite a bit of time focusing its energy on industry professionals, especially in the GTA. And I'm going to be curious to see if they're going to continue with that strategy or if it might be time to try something different. Because as you said, VQA sales have not really increased by any sort of meaningful measure over the past decade. And, as someone who is making and selling, I think, pretty okay wine, I certainly have some decent listings in Toronto, but, it's a fight to get every one of those listings. And, it's still a problem that with all the energy that's gone into wooing the a lot of sommeliers in Toronto, that Ontario is still wildly underrepresented on most of those lists. So, I'd be curious to see if Wine Country Ontario starts to promote direct to consumer, but there's so many other problems that have to go with that, and we'll touch on them later on when we start talking about the LCBO and what might be happening, right? Like,
well, I think you're right. I think that WAMO, Wine Country Ontario, the whole marketing board has to focus on the consumer first, because you really have to own your own market, and we don't. We are not. You're living in Ontario. It is totally amazing how many people that I get on tour, and they're like, "We had no idea that Ontario made wine," and it's like shocking. I understand people coming from the U.S. and Japan or Brazil or wherever they're coming from, and that's just this week. That will say, we didn't know. We came for the falls. We saw you had wine. But how many Ontarians don't know we're making, quality wine and not just ice wine? And that's I believe, is a fault of the old guard of WAMO. They were always so worried about, let's go to England, let's go to Germany, let's go, who cares? We're not going to sell that much wine.
You know what? I actually don't think that the export market was and is a bad strategy for WAMO, because it doesn't make a difference whether it's Germany or Italy. Like, having exported to Saskatchewan, it is a Toronto thing. Torontonians aren't going to drink Ontario wine until it's celebrated elsewhere. Like, I think that's the one part that I will respectfully disagree with you. I recognize the challenge that WAMO has with, sinking a lot of money into, foreign business development missions when, people locally aren't drinking Ontario wine. I mean, you and I have been doing this for a long time and been preaching this. It's just like, I don't know if anybody anywhere has come up with like a really good solution to make the switch. And I don't know. My hope is still that it's generationally going to change. I keep meeting a lot of Gen Z somms, either on social media or at restaurants, who are now starting to make decisions. And there seems to be a little bit more excitement to tasting local stuff. So like, when I tell them that I've got a little virtual winery, people are really excited about it. And, with the ADX Wine Company, it's not like we're making trend-setting wine. Like, we're making pretty conventional wine on a small scale with really good fruit, right? Like, we're not chasing trends. So to see people excited about these wines entering the market as opposed to something new and funky and esoteric is, I don't know. I feel like I've said the same thing on this podcast many times.
So my question is, so I get their newsletter for the consumer. You obviously get their newsletter for the industry. How many times since you've been getting this newsletter have you seen, like, I don't know, a call out or an announcement that they're bringing people in to taste Ontario wine, like people from Norway, Sweden, Germany, England? I know they do occasionally.
I don't know if they ever really announce when people are coming, but there's call outs all the time that, X publication is looking for a product, X initiative is looking for product, when the foreign monopolies, like when I think Sweden puts a call out, like those all go in the newsletter. But I don't know how often, foreign journalists' arrival is being like announced in that newsletter, where it's like, that would be interesting to know, because if you think about it, you and I go on what they call these fam trips or familiarization trips, and you go to you go to Italy, you go to France, Loire Valley, you've gone to Prosecco, things like that. It'd be interesting to know how often that Wine Country Ontario brings a gaggle of media
around to check stuff out. And I think that might be a better way to do it, because I know when I go to Florence every year for the Tuscaneti Prima, I can talk pretty fluently, not in Italian, sadly, but I can talk pretty fluently about Tuscan wine. And if you get people here, they become ambassadors for your country's brand or your area's brand.
I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that. I mean, I do like the idea. I
can't believe I left you speechless there for a moment.
No, I didn't know where you were really going with that. I do like the idea of creating like an ambassadorship program. And the thing is, like, you know me, like when I've had a chance to visit certain wine regions and come back really hyped up. Like, whenever I get a chance to get my hands on Franciacorta, I buy it because I left that region profoundly inspired. And you know what? I think it would be fantastic if I could have, some sort of certification calling me a Franciacorta ambassador, if on any, on any circumstance, it just puts me in a better position to be able to talk about the brand to other people, to local people, and help, spread the word for it. And, I don't think it would be difficult to create a program like that to provide them with, quarterly materials and updates to allow them continue to preach the gospel of Ontario. But I think the challenge still remains, if we create this ambassadorship program and we have ambassadors in Italy, France, England,
I don't exactly
Portugal.
Ambassadors, but what I am talking about is, so you and I'm gonna go to a place that we both gone, and I know that it was the Languedoc, and you and I have been at mass tastings. You know what I mean? And you did the exact same thing when you're in Alto Adige. So there's another one that basically you go into a room and you either self pour or you have a bunch of wineries there. Now we do that with Wine Country Ontario, or and all the media comes out and the consumers come out, but they're all from Ontario. As a winery owner yourself, if you got in the newsletter and it said, look, we are inviting 40 journalists from around the world to come out. They're going to go to Roy Thompson Hall and they are going to taste, these 40 journalists are going to taste Ontario wine. Would you like to put your wine into the tasting? Would you present your wine?
I would not.
You would not. Okay.
I absolutely would not. Well, I mean, that's it though, is I'm not, I'm not ignorant to the market placement of my product. Like, I'm making very good wine. I've gotten some very nice reviews, especially on the last damn Chardonnay that I made. Am I making even, let's just say we have 100 Chardonnays from Ontario that end up at this Roy Thompson tasting. And I know that Harold Teal's going to be there, that Thomas Batchelder's going to be there, that Ilya Senchuk's going to be there, that, Flat Rock is going to be there, that 16 Mile is going to be there, the Back 10 Cellar is going to be there, that Malivore is going to be there, that Ravine's going to be there, that Stratus is going to be there, that Craig McDonald's going to show up with this single stuff. And they're like, boom, there we go. We have a list of 10 wines that are going to outshine anything that ADX makes. And why would I want to go to a mass tasting with 100 products when there's a very good chance that my wine is not going to be talked about? Like, it's already hard enough to get media coverage on it, that I think my time, and this is where I put it on the winery shoulders, my time is better served reaching out to the media that I want to talk about my product, which is why I spend a lot of time on Instagram talking to the people who are writing and posting about wine and offering opportunities for them and inviting them to come taste my wines. And that's something that you and I get to experience, is the people who invite the journalists to come taste their wines get their wines reviewed. That's how it works. That's how it works on at thegrapeguy.com. That's how it works on underwinereview.ca. That's how it works on winesandniagara.com. Like, we don't have time to go visit 180 wineries because this is a side hustle for all of us. If you want your products reviewed, you got to reach out to us. And like, that's the other thing too, is you asked me about a winery owner. For me to write off a case of wine and to drive them to, wine writers' houses, whether they live in St. Catharines or Hamilton or hell, even Toronto, is still not that much money. And frankly, a lower risk proposition than entering a mass tasting where my wine might get lost in the shuffle.
I got it. Okay. So as a smaller brand, but you did mention about 10 other brands that would probably go to this and I'm talking about foreign journalists to get them to talk about Ontario. So there's some other big news that happened in Ontario. There were some sales of wineries.
Yeah.
The smaller news was, I guess, that Featherstone quietly announced that they sold to a couple out of Toronto. I don't know if you have their name, but the name didn't ring a bell to me. So
they
obviously
sold in February.
They sold in February and made the announcement this month.
Yeah, I also was not familiar with the name of the new couple, but from what I have heard, I was looking for information on it. I couldn't find where I saw the information posted. So the couple is Rayla and George Myhall. They purchased the winery in February 2024. It does appear that Dave and Louise are going to be part of the transition and still involved in the winery for
2 years. 2 years.
Okay, so there is a hard deadline on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's great. I'll be completely honest. Like, I'm certainly not rolling in the dough, but the ADX Wine Company is at a point where we're starting to think about purchasing a farm, and we did have a conversation about whether or not it would be worth getting an investor and purchasing Featherstone. And I really didn't want to be the guy that bought that place and paved over it. I didn't want, like, unlike Angel's Gate, I think a lot of people would miss Featherstone, and I think that would be a very uphill battle to fight if you were to kill that brand that, has been around for a long time, that has been built up. It's one of the only really good, consistent bottles that you can get at the LCBO, and thank God for the consistency of Featherstone for people who visit the LCBO to find something decent from Ontario.
I'm looking forward to seeing who they bring on as winemaker. Obviously, they're going to have to bring somebody on soon so that Dave can kind of show them the ropes of what Featherstone's brand is. And it'll be interesting to see whether they continuously they keep the brand as is. Obviously, we're just speculating, or if they make some major changes. So it's going to be the worst case scenario that we've seen in the last number of years was Lely.
Yeah,
obviously a great brand that went downhill with the purchase. They said they were going to do one thing, they did something completely different,
allegedly,
and then lost the winery, and now it's under new management, and I think it's as you said, an uphill battle to try and rebuild that brand.
Well, I think it's still a damn shame at the damage that the criminal, we can call him a criminal, that the criminal previous owner of Lely, summarily destroyed the reputation of one of Ontario's like crown jewel premium wineries, and now Matt Fike Turkman, who's got Stonebridge being made out of Lely as well, and I believe On 7 is under that same roof. There are some fantastic wines coming out of Lely. The amount of time it took to destroy the reputation of Lely, I think it's going to take probably 5 times as long to restore it. But if you're listening to this podcast right now and it's the news I'm saying is a surprise to you about what has happened at Lely, I do urge you to go revisit it, retaste the wines there. There is some really good shit happening there.
There is, and I'm still kind of confused myself that I think the winery seems to be called Lely, but then there's all the other brands that they have there. So I don't really know if there's a lot of Lely branded wine.
Not yet, but it's coming. It's coming.
So I hope so.
No, it's definitely coming. You have you been there for a tasting? Have you met the owner?
I've met the owner. I've tried a couple of things. I'm telling you, you need to go and do a tasting with him to hear the whole story. Too much for this podcast, but it is a wildly entertaining story. All right. The next one is a little bit bigger news.
Yes.
And that is that Chateau has been sold, but it has been sold within the wine community.
Okay, I just saw the headline that it was sold to an investment firm.
So it's the investment firm behind Niagara's Crush Pad, which used to be the old Stony Ridge.
Oh, interesting.
And so, if people remember Marco Piccoli from Jackson Triggs fame, he moved over to Niagara Crush, and now he's going to be the CEO of Chateau de Charme and be the head of winemaking and all that kind of neat stuff. More interestingly, is that Kevin Panagapka of 2027 fame, who I guess he's going to move his winery over to Niagara Crush, and he's going to sell his wines out of there and become this, I think it's COO of Niagara Crush. So he's going to be now head of winemaking at the Crush Pad. Marco Piccoli is going to be head of the whole thing, but concentrating on Chateau de Charme. Now, if I've got any of that wrong, somebody reach out. But that's what my understanding of the whole new.
Man, I'm surprised for you to say Marco Piccoli of Jackson Triggs fame, because my experience was when Marco Piccoli was the head winemaker there was when they furloughed the Clos Jordanne brand, tried to launch the Arterra brand as a premium brand, and they came to market with an Appassimento Pinot Noir, which was an utter and complete embarrassment and failure.
And failure was
and I should also say the quality of those wines was plonk at best. I would rather drink a bottle of Bodacious than any of those Arterra branded wines, and I have to say I was happy to see that brand disappear. I've been a little confused at the rising star of Marco, given the quality of the work that was done at Jackson Triggs, but maybe I'm missing something here.
I think you're missing. My belief behind that is that anything that was done in the under the Arterra brand, I think he was kind of. Now, again, I'm just speculating. I think you're kind of forced into doing that. They say we want to do this. This is how we want to do it. It's the same time that things like bourbon barrel wines were coming out. Yeah. How important Appassimento was, and I think at that point you're just jumping on a bandwagon and you're trying to get that out there. They never did it at Jackson Triggs. Like, you'll look at Jackson Triggs wines, they never did Appassimento at that time. So it was an attempt to jump on a bandwagon, make a new brand so that the LCBO would take it, because that's what the LCBO wants. They constantly want a new label.
Okay, but even if you have a new label, like, you have a mouth, you can tell whether something tastes good or not. And I don't think there's anybody that would say that those wines passed the muster, both the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir, when they left the cellar door.
Correct, but if that's what head office wants, that's what head office gets.
All right. Well, in if that's the case, like, I'm more than happy to revisit. I haven't been to the Crush studio yet. Seeing fresh investment in Niagara is, always a good thing. I think the Chateau de Charme brand has been struggling a little bit since Michelle, rest in peace, passed away a few years ago, because she really was like a very bright star, front and center, and flew that Chateau de Charme flag highly. It was... It does seem like we still get media samples from Chateau de Charme from time to time, but, we're getting to the point where we're getting vintages that are what most wineries would have finished selling many years ago, right? So yeah. I'm curious about what the situation is at Chateau de Charme, whether they're sitting on inventory. Like, I know Amélie Bourry in the past has made some really great wines, but like the quality of the last batches of media samples has not been as good as it has been.
I will say that I tasted two really good wines of late. Her Cuvée André, the 2023 rosé, is quite lovely, and the new sparkling rosé, which is 5 years on lees, really good, really spectacular wine. And both will be in my rosé report. That's why I'm able to say that. But I was really impressed with that sparkling. And when she said it was 5 years on lees, I was like, no way. She goes, yeah. And then I went looking on the website, and it said 18 months. And I got in touch with her, and I'm like, what's the discrepancy? And she said, we're getting that change right now. Thank you for letting me know, because 5 years on lees for a sparkling rosé, and it still it tastes fresh and fruit driven. I would say that it's probably one of the better rosé sparklings I've tried so far for the report.
Oh, right on. Well, so I guess I'm a little bit behind in my tasting.
Yes, well, rosés don't get sent out very often. It's one of those, I find it very strange that in a lot of sample packs you don't see a lot of rosé unless you as I do request it, and I don't know why. I think it's still an underrated wine, but we'll get into that once the report comes out, and maybe we'll talk about that when my report comes out in early July.
Well, so since you seem to know the scuttlebutt of what's happening with this sale here, with Marco coming in to run the winemaking, is Amélie Bourry going to still be making the wine at Chateau des Charmes?
Well, that I didn't get a sense for. The few reports that I read said that Paul Jr. is trying to keep everything the same in the sale, right? So the staff and everything like that. No mention about whether Marco is taking over winemaking completely or if he's just going to oversee Amélie. I guess waits to see until I know they're bringing something. I think the company's called Bev Pro in to help them during the transition. They're a PR company. And so that it's going to be interesting. The next 2 years are going to be very interesting to see what happens, both with Featherstone, because Dave and Louise will be there for 2 years, and what's going to happen to Chateau des Charmes, because I think the transition is going to take probably a year or 2 years just to see everything go. I know that Paul Jr. is going to continue to oversee the vineyards, especially on his father's house across the road, the Paul Bosque Vineyard. But I don't think all the details are fully out yet. So, we'll have to wait to see how this all comes through the wash, as they say.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see the transition. I'll be frank. When I see an investment firm come in and make an acquisition like this, if I were working for Chateau des Charmes, I would be nervous. Just having been, a part of a radio station that was bought and sold 2 times while I worked there, is as much as the purchaser can come in with the best of intentions, changes tend to happen, costs tend to be reduced, and if you're investing in a large winery, you want to make sure that the adage isn't true that how do you make a small fortune in the wine industry, you start with a large one. Having resources to use and resources backing you doesn't mean that you get to be foolish with them, especially if you're making an acquisition hoping to improve your margins, right?
I know somebody who was there during the announcement. Basically, it was announced on I think it was announced on Friday. That's Friday sounds right. Monday was maybe Friday, Monday, whatever day it was announced. I do know somebody who was there doing a tour, and they said there was a nervous energy in the building. So yeah, I think people are a little bit nervous about their where their jobs are going to shake out. But again, we're going to have to kind of just keep your eye on it and watch what happens.
Now we're heading into Canada Day, and next week there may be some big shakeups at the LCBO. But have you seen this commercial that's been running on social media for I guess the past couple months now?
Hello, pores. I'm Callum. I may be rich, but I'm drowning in profits. That's why I want a big slice of the LCBO. Sure, they invest $2.5 billion in your community. That's basically nothing to me. Stop funding public services. Start funding me. No, I get it. I just don't see why we need schools and hospitals. Pick one. Who's going to both?
All right. So that is an ad from OPSU, the union that represents the LCBO workers.
And what did he say he was at the beginning? I totally missed that.
Oh, he says his name is Callum. Like it's a clear parody of Galen Weston and Loblaws.
Oh,
and this is just, it's the annual argument that when the government starts to talk about opening up liquor sales, like virtually every other jurisdiction on the planet, with the exception of a handful of states. And a couple of other countries, but I mean, basically treating the people of Ontario like grown-ups instead of like children. OPSU has to come in with its fear-mongering, crappy argument that like the sky's going to fall, where that our healthcare is going to be underfunded. Well, I mean, big surprise to everybody, it's already underfunded thanks to Doug Ford. But I mean, we already have like the province of Alberta, and their healthcare is just as crappy as ours, and it has nothing to do with booze sales, and their government still gets its fair share of taxes from that. And yeah, what we're talking about next week is that apparently the LCBO might be going on strike. So where do we want to talk? Where do we want to go first? We want to talk about the potential strike, or do we want to talk about these asinine ads and how ridiculous OPSU is with their dumb arguments?
Well, they're one and the same, right?
Now
they're going to fearmonger everybody into, well, first of all, as of Thursday, the LCBO is going to extend their hours so that you can stock up before the strike. So I think they're going to open at 9:30 in the morning and be open till 10 at night. Which has always been,
but I mean, but Michael,
something they were against because
but Michael, there's going to be so much violence and rampant drunk driving if their hours were extended. Like Michael, oh my gosh, like how many people are going to die because of these expanded hours? Get me OPSU on the phone now. We need OPSU on the phone now. How many people need to die? How many people need to die before the strike takes place?
One of my favorites that Smokey Thompson used to do is there's going to be more spousal abuse if we're allowed to drink more or buy alcohol later. Was always one of my favorite of his things. Thank goodness he's gone. But they're going to expand their hours. Of course, the LCBO is looking for more job security. They have their own plan of how they're going to make Ontario better for booze, which is more stores. One of my favorites was they're going to do better at their online shop, because we all know how great that's working out for them. They just want to do more of the crappy stuff that they're doing. I think if we allow private enterprise in on this, I think they're going to do a lot better. And let's be honest, the LCBO is not a profitable organization. They never have been. When they tell you their numbers, when they give you that amount at the end of the year and they say, oh, we gave X number of dollars to Ontario, it's all tax dollars. They include the tax dollars. I would love to see the number if they pulled the tax dollars out of how the profitability of the LCBO is. We'd find out that they are losing money.
I can 100% agree with what you're saying. I mean, you know what? It's not that they're necessarily unprofitable, but I would say that we would be surprised if we saw that number. And the anti-competitive behaviors that the LCBO engage in, like the Food and Drink magazine, the fact that they take advertising dollars for that is completely cuckoo bananas to me. I get that money is going to our coffers, our general coffers, to fund programming, blah blah blah. But like it has literally put small enterprise out of business. I was recently, I've talked to people at Vitis, I've talked to people at Vine Roots recently just about the challenges that come with securing new ad dollars, which is already a tough thing. And the thing is, if you're Balderson Cheese or Mercedes-Benz, are you looking to invest with us? And Michael, you for example, you're looking for sponsors for the Rosé Report. And it is a widely read report, and it is tough to knock out even a few $100 because the Food and Drink just sucks up so much of that.
They suck up everything, and again, a winery will go with that because that is where the bread is buttered. All right, like if you put $10,000 into Food and Drink magazine, well, then the LCBO will look more favorably upon your bottle of wine, your bottle of beer, your spirit, whatever. As I say, I can't guarantee that your rosé is going to get a high mark, but I'd love to see in the report. Independent journalism is dying in this province.
Independent journalism is full on like dead when it comes to wine. Like the lines are so blurred between who's being paid for what. Like it is mind blowing. But I mean, I covered that last year in Canada Land, and nothing changed.
Correct. But the LCBO is just fear mongering, and I personally, I actually believe this time they're going to go on strike, and the reason is, I don't think this government will back down.
Okay, well, give me what are the demands that they're asking for? Like, what's the sticking point from what you've read? Because I'll be honest, I haven't paid as close attention to the potential for a strike because I have a hard time imagining this premier who is clearly obsessed with booze. And I mean, that's another topic for another day, that everyone in this province should be outraged with the fact that the government is spending $1 billion to break the Master Framework Agreement. Like, don't get me wrong, I want to see wine and beer accessible in more places. Like, I think that is something that, especially the wineries in Ontario, would be a step in the right direction. Granted, I don't see you and I heading to a 7-Eleven to buy a bottle of Eculus. Like, I agree with that argument that it's not going to be good wine in these convenience stores, but like, it's still a step in the right direction. There's the aside done. We shall be mad at Doug for spending money to break the Master Framework Agreement. We could have waited the 12 months for it to expire rather than spend money to break the agreement.
I think he makes it back on the tax dollars that stores are going to bring in.
Yeah, but we would make those tax dollars anyways without having to break the agreement. It was 12 months. Plus, it would give us more time to set up like what that framework's going to look like, gauge for interest. Like, it's being rushed through for no good reason other than the fact that he wants to get it in place before an election so he can make it part of a way that he's buying your vote. Like
on the other hand, the framework's been sitting on a shelf for 20 years. They've had so many reports on how they can do this. It's been sitting on the shelf. I remember sitting. Yes,
I'm not disagreeing with you, but we didn't need to spend $1 billion to break that agreement. One more year wouldn't have made a difference, and we would come back and make that money back without having to start at $1 billion loss to make the money back. There's no reason to rush it. There's no reason to rush it.
But let's say he does not win the next election.
Well,
then
I mean, that's
we're
it.
Stuck again with we're stuck again for another 100 years with the LCBO. I agree with him to move this thing along. It's been since 1927. It's time to break this thing apart.
Well, I mean, even with these changes, though, it's still like incremental. Like, I was talking to my wife about this earlier. Is just like, remember how it works with the grocery stores? The grocery stores had to bid on the licenses, right? The grocery stores had to bid on the licenses, with basically being like,
they only had a few. Yeah,
this is the percentage of profit margin I'm going to take. And if I remember, that profit margin that they had to bid on was between 0 and 6%. And I have a hard time believing
ended up at 3%.
So that's it. Now here's the deal: is if I'm running a Big Bear convenience store in Hamilton, and I'm selling Bush Lager, Laker Lager, and Pabst Blue Ribbon at a 3% margin, and this is one where I'm not going with the OPSU market. Why would I take that risk for my employees? You know, especially in a neighborhood like in neighborhood like downtown Hamilton, and I live in this neighborhood and I love this neighborhood, but for what amounts to, let's just say it's $14 for a 6-pack of PBR. I would make 42 cents on a 6-pack. And how often do you think I'm going to have to worry about people breaking a window to come in and help themselves to beer, or potentially holding up my employees for a 6-pack of beer for what amounts to 42 cents? I'm not going to do it. Let the LCBO deal with it.
Well, the LCBO is not dealing with it, and that's the problem. And the LCBO is going to continue to have spirits. I don't know how many people are breaking in for a 6-pack of beer. Are you kidding, Michael? Like, are you kidding me, Michael? Like, my car gets rummaged through on a regular basis for a couple of bucks worth of change. I have people going through my backyard. I had a full tank of propane, like, taken from my backyard.
I live in a city where there is a tent city in every major park, and that doesn't apply just to Hamilton. That applies to Toronto. I don't know what the situation is in St. Catharines. Trust me, you start putting beer in convenience stores, and you don't make it worth the financial risk to cover it. Nobody's going to uptake on it. It's just not going to be worth it.
Well, so now the profit margin is going to go up to 10%. So that's one of the things. And they're
great. So I'll make $1.40. So I'll make $1.40 on a 10-pack.
Look, it's gotta be broken up in some way. If it's incremental, it's got to be incremental.
Yes.
We obviously didn't want to do it like Alberta did it, which was basically you go to bed on a Sunday and you wake up on a Monday, and it's a completely different system. We decided not to do it that way. I'm not in government, but this system has got to be broken up. And if this is how we've got to do it, or this is how they decide to do it, and if the LCBO wants to fight it, let them fight it. But I think this government is going to do it, and they're not going to back down as other governments have in the past. I remember David Peterson said he was going to break them up, never broke them up. Bob Ray said he was going to break them up, never broke them up. Kathleen Wynne said she was going to break them up, never broke them up. You know what? If this guy's going to actually do it, then I'm all for it.
I don't think Doug's going to be the one to do it. And this is another one too, where you think that this government's going to let them go on strike just because you think that Doug's not going to flinch, right? Like, you don't have any other reason why. Like is the LCBO making any demands that are completely cuckoo bananas unreasonable here?
They want more permanent employees. They want obviously higher wages. Typical
union stuff. I mean, frankly, that's something as a labor guy, I actually agree with the LCBO. The amount of part-time work and temporary work that they use is obscene. And it's exactly like you've said. This is one where you worked with the union to make concessions. The LCBO employees are some of the best paid retail workers in the country. And, good for the union for being able to negotiate that. But they do rely heavily on part-time workers that should be full-time workers. I would agree with that.
And because they are unionized, look, I'm not crapping all over every LCB employee, but for the amount of good LCB employees there's about 10 there that have the scowl on their face and can't give you the time of day and don't know their ass from their elbow. So, you know what?
Oh, I had what had to be the rudest checkout experience at Bay and Bloor of all places in Toronto. I recently went to a South African tasting and pulled out the LCBO app and found a bottle of premium Chardonnay that I wanted to purchase. And I just put my hand on the bottle before my credit card had rang through approved, and I got snapped at by the person on the other end of the cash. And it's just like, I understand that your location may have some issues with shoplifting, but I think you got to be careful treating all of your customers like criminals, especially when they pull out, a nice credit card and they're buying a high-end bottle of wine, right?
Yeah. So I have problems, lots of problems with the LCBO. I've had problems with the LCBO near me. They wouldn't take back a bottle. The LCBO is now, limited how they're going to take back bottles. Now you have to have. I get it. They're getting ripped off left and right. But having a manager actually ask me why I have a 10-year-old bottle of corked wine and why I'm returning it, and who the heck holds on to wine for 10 years, baffled my mind. I was like, "Are you serious? Do you really work here?" So. Until we can get rid of, the bad apples in the LCBO, which is never going to happen, because everybody wants to work for the LCBO because it's a great wage. When I worked for them 20 plus years ago as a part timer at Christmas, I was making big dollars at that point, thrilled.
Yeah,
and I can only imagine what they make now.
I mean, we could pull it up. I mean, that's a nice thing about the OPSU contract. I know a colleague of mine a couple of years ago, when I pulled up the wage grid, a product consultant makes about $65,000 a year, which is it's good money. It's not great in the whole grand scheme of things, but for what amounts to a retail employee, that's pretty good wage.
That's a great wage.
That's a fair wage.
Actually.
Yeah.
That's a very good wage for a retail employee. So it's the usual stuff that they want, and I really want them to go on strike. I want people to experience what it is like to buy wine elsewhere, to buy beer elsewhere, and to realize that they don't have to be beholden to the LCBO.
Well, and here's the thing that's kind of driving me nuts in my inbox and looking at my social media right now is it's just now that the agents are stepping up, being like, we're an alternative to the LCBO. Where have you guys been? Honestly,
exactly.
the bottle shops need your help. Like, we're seeing bottle shops closing because the model, a lot of people are telling me, is not sustainable. And I make the argument that it's not that the model is unsustainable. It's the fact that the model hasn't been marketed properly. A lot of these bottle shops are catering to extremely niche markets, like the natural wine crowd. People who are really looking for off the beaten path. I don't understand how we don't have more bottle shops that are just carrying, the hard to find bottles. And I understand it's a challenge, like I said, with that small markup. Like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, saying that I wouldn't run a convenience store for $1.40 on a 6-pack. But, selling a bottle of La Pierre Gamay, I just bought a bottle of that from Adega in Prince Edward County for $70. And I know that the price that they get that wholesale is about $50. Yeah, I'm paying a $20 markup, but it also means I don't have to buy 12 bottles of that La Pierre Morgon,
What has always messed me up, and I was almost positive that during COVID they loosened the restrictions, and I don't think the restrictions are still there. You could buy a mixed case from an agent. I don't think agents
you still can
want to deal with mixed agents.
You still can. I mean, I'm just saying that, like, the agents have been.
Why can't I buy one? If I want to try two of this, why agents don't go? Yep, we'll do that for you.
Well, the agent
they make tons of dollars.
Well, no, but okay,
because they're breaking up the cases.
Okay, but Michael, most of the agents are already doing that. The problem is the agents are marketing. That's
not always true.
The agents are already.
I've talked to a few agents who don't do that.
Okay, well, the problem with the agents right now is they're marketing to the people who are already on their roster, right? Like, I've started buying from agencies, and I'm on their mailing list. Once I'm in the system, like, I'm buying a lot less wine from the LCBO and purchasing from agents direct. I know I've talked about it on this podcast before, my little island of misfit toys, where I split up cases with friends and colleagues. But like, I really don't think that the bottle shops by and large have done a great job at marketing themselves as an alternative to the LCBO. It's been a value add to other parts of the business doing that. And there we go.
Yeah, it shocks me that when you talk to people and you go, "Oh yeah, you can buy from a bottle shop," they're like, "I had no idea." And it's because I don't think they're as widely known, and a lot of them are in Toronto. There's not a lot of them outside of Toronto. There's like one or two in each little town. But
I mean, if that's what the market can support, that's what the market can support. A product consultant under the contract that's just expired from the LCBO at the top of the pay grid makes $69,105. I've got the whole contract in front of me here.
What are you making as a part-timer by the hour? That's what I'd be interested in.
Liquor store manager 3 makes $76,786, so $36.79 an hour. Let's take a look here. So liquor store clerk grade 3, was that what your job was? So customer service representative.
I was just a guy who slung bottles and helped people on the floor.
All right, let's take a look here. So liquor store clerk grade 3, which is customer service representative, at the top of the grid. So stage 9 is $30.57. The bottom of the grid, though, is a little surprising. $16.75. A livable wage in Hamilton is considered $20 and change an hour. You're not making a livable wage in a liquor store clerk hourly position until you hit step 4 on the wage grid, which is $20.99.
I was, I guess, part-time, seasonal, I guess, at that point. I'm pretty sure I was making $15 an hour. So, and that's over 20 years ago.
Well, there we go.
So I was thrilled by that. Thrilled.
I
Obviously
wasn't
at that age.
I wasn't sure you'd be able to change my mind with regard to the LCBO going on strike, but I'm curious whether or not the union's going to dig their heels in. I mean, I think this is a situation, and when I was part of the union for News Talk 1010, legacy media is an industry that is struggling to retain its ad dollars. We knew that we were on a dying ship and we could only negotiate as hard as we could. Surely the writing's on the wall for LCBO employees here, and I would be surprised if they go on strike, but I do agree with you that if there's any government that's going to let it happen, it'll be this one.
Yeah, and I really want them to do it, and then maybe if we can get rid of George Stelias, it'd be great too. But that's another story.
Why did you throw that in there at like minute 55 of this podcast?
Because I've said it before. Completely
gratuitous.
I think the man has ruined the LCBO, and the LCBO could be a great store if they actually tried and stopped being what they are and changed.
Well, okay. Can I say one last thing about the LCBO as we wrap up? Is because I have done some a little bit of reporting work for my other podcast, Tasting Together, if no one has listened to it, to unpack the anti-competitive behavior that the LCBO is doing with the spirits companies right now, where essentially what they're doing is when you do business with the LCBO, you have an agreement with them to have the lowest retail price on a spirit in Canada. Okay?
Yes. That's what they did. Yes.
Now, if you're a spirit manufacturer, you negotiate your wholesale price to the LCBO, and that's that. But what the LCBO has been doing is they've been dicking with the prices of the retail product once the wholesale price is agreed to, and they're taking a look at what deals the other provinces have, and they're clawing back the difference. Now, the thing that's completely mind-blowing about this is, as you alluded to earlier, the numbers at the LCBO have not been great for the past couple of years. And, I mean, my generation's drinking less. Gen Z is drinking even less. So how do you make up that shortfall in revenue to make sure that you look like you're a great business guy? Is you find a way to squeeze your suppliers. I mean, that's a great way to do business, right, Michael? But yeah, they've been hitting the distillers with a clawback on these prices. And it is completely mind-blowing because the distributors, the distillers that are doing business with the LCBO want to do business with the LCBO because they're a large customer. So they're going into these deals in good faith. And then the LCBO is essentially punching themselves in the face and being like, why did you hit me? You owe me a bunch of money. It blows my mind.
And they were talking about pulling their products. I haven't seen that happen yet. And I don't know if they're going to. Again, it's one of those things that I really wanted them to do that. I want people to start hitting back at the LCBO because they are also clawing back. They are also clawing money out for shipping. As another thing that they are they're charging more for shipping. Somebody told me that at one point it was $6 a case, and now it's $40 a case in shipping. So they're just raising the price
wherever they can
out of people.
Yeah, they're doing it wherever they can, and it's
less selection is going to give you less profitability, and that's what they've done. They've given us less selection, less choice, less good choice, and then they're wondering why nobody wants to come buy wine from them or beer or spirits.
Well, there we go. So on the next Two Guys Talking Wine, we are definitely going to be talking about the Rosé Report. Before we wrap up here, though, just once again, a thank you to Los Arango Tequila for sponsoring Two Guys Talking Wine during the summer months here. I have been enjoying this tequila on ice, just straight up, and have been surprising friends with it. It is very clean, smooth, fantastic tequila. $60.15 on LTO until July 20th, but make sure you stock up because you can buy it at extended hours before the LCBO goes on strike. Oh, the humanity.
Woo! You can buy it at $9.59 at night now. So or starting Thursday anyway.
I'm André Prue from AndreWineReview.ca at André Wine Review.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
André Wine Review on social media.
I'm Michael Pincus of MichaelPincusWineReview.com. The great guy on most social media, Michael Pincus on Facebook. André, it's been a pleasure talking to you, bitching a little bit about some things and talking about what the heck's going to happen over the next couple of years here in Ontario.
Good night.
Yeah, good night.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to Two Guys Talking Wine on iTunes.
Two Guys Talking Wine is produced by Jim Ray, Adam Duran, and Ken Little.